Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Covington City Council meeting for Tuesday, November 12th. In compliance with state law, City Council special and regular meetings are being held in a hybrid format with in-person, telephonic, and virtual options for public viewing and participation. With that, call this meeting to order. And Krista, if you could please call the roll.
Councilmember Soltis. I am here. Councilmember Porter.
Here.
Councilmember Hartsock.
Here.
Councilmember Harjahausen.
Present.
Councilmember Samomo.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Here.
Mayor Wagner.
Present.
We have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you, Krista. And just for the audience, Mayor Pro Tem Smith is joining us virtually this evening. And if everybody could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Next is approval of the agenda. Regan, do we have any changes tonight?
No changes, Mayor.
Thank you, Regan. Look for approval of the agenda.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor state aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda has been approved. Tonight, we do have a public communication, a presentation about the fire benefit charge. We have Chief Carson and Assistant Chief Penwell here, right? Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you for having us. We appreciate it. I'm just going to take a moment to introduce myself and then give way to Chief Penwell as he's going to go through the presentation. But I don't believe I have been out to council since becoming essentially your fire chief, which is almost 2 years now. For those who don't know me, I grew up in the fire service in South King County, started in the city of SeaTac back in 1992, 32 years ago now. Came into the RFA by way of merger back in 2014. And have had the opportunity to do a number of jobs here, shift commander, the regional training chief, our operations chief, and then the fire chief just since January of last year. But I do think of myself as your city's fire chief, so I appreciate the invite and the opportunity to come out. The fire benefit charge is particularly complex, and there's no one who understands it better than Chief Penwell, so it's a good chance for a bit of an overview. So if there's no questions for me, I'm going to give away to Sean.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to go through a very quick presentation about the benefit charge and then answer any questions that anybody might have. So this first slide talks about the history of the benefit charge, and the key takeaway here is there's a lot of community support for Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority and the fire benefit charge as a way to fund sustainable services inside the community. The big thing is in 2021, the voters approved a permanent benefit charge. We're the only fire authority that has a permanent benefit charge. Otherwise, you have to renew it every 6 to 10 years. Obviously, the community feels that we're worth funding in perpetuity. So the fire benefit charge is a two-part funding system. You have your tax levy that you pay, that's a ad valorem tax based on your assessed value, and then the benefit charge, which is assessed based on square footage and risk factors. So it's a fee. It has nothing to do with the value of your home. It's about the size and risk that your property presents. And those two things together are the total package that help support and fund Puget Sound Fire. You'll see there it authorizes when you have a benefit charge, it reduces the levy amount to $1. Normally, a fire department can have up to $1.50. It reduces it down to $1 and then make up the difference with the benefit charge. So the basics. So the level of service is determined by our governance board. So they say, this is the level of service we want to provide to the community. There's exemptions. Any structure that's less than 400 square feet doesn't get assessed. So your backyard shed, we don't try to go find that and figure out how much that is and assess that. All the property types that are specified in RCW 5226-180, they're exempt. It's things that we're typically familiar with: schools, religious buildings, government facilities, all low-income housing, all those kinds of things that are exempt in the RCW are exempt from the benefit charge as well. The proportionate share can't exceed the benefit. That means that the benefit that the citizens receive from the fire service and the benefit charge, we can't be charging a benefit charge that's higher than that. So we do a calculation that figures out the benefit of having a fire department. If you have a WSRB rating of 10, which means you have no fire department, you won't be able to get homeowners insurance. And then you can figure out a cost benefit analysis of having, I believe in Covington, the WSRB rating is 3. So that the benefit of bringing it from a 10 down to a 3 has a value to it that you're not paying in insurance. So benefit charge that people pay is less than what they would end up paying just in their increased insurance premiums. And that doesn't count EMS and all of the other services that we provide that are part of our budget too. And then the apportionment formula is based on the needed fire flow and the resources to deliver that fire flow, and then the risk profile. And it's a big, long math formula. It has a square root in it. It makes, that's what computers report to do that math for us. There's some statutory limits on the FBC. The FBC can't be more than 60% of our operating budget, less any operations suppression contracts. So we have contracts for service with the city of Maple Valley Fire District 43 and with the city of SeaTac. We back that number out of our total budget, and then we have to look at the fire benefit charge versus that operation budget, and it can't be more than 60%. That's the legal limit on that. And you can see the history there. We've hovered over the last 5 years right around 40%. So here's the benefit charge process. These are the steps in general for throughout the year. So the governing body sets the total benefit charge for Puget Sound Fire. That's the total amount to collect to fully fund the fire department. That charge is we use the formula to apportion that throughout all of the buildings inside Puget Sound Fire. Then we have to notify the King County Treasurer because they do all the collections for that. Then at the first of the year, property owners are going to receive a notice, and it gives them the opportunity to look up their fire benefit charge. And then the last part of that is property owners are also afforded an opportunity to appeal during the appeals process that happens the first part of February. During the 2 governance board meetings in February is when we do our appeals process. So quickly talk about the changes for 2025. For 2025, the FBC has been set by the governance board at $39,250,000. Like I said, that's about 39% and some change of our total budget. And then the last one, this is a bit of an eye chart. This is the factor of the formula factors that the governance board adopts. It shows for all the different categories as we break buildings into residential, commercial, multifamily dwellings, and then mobile homes. And we apply different factors to them based on size and risk. And that's the chart that we use to do that. So pending any questions, that's my presentation.
Does anybody have any questions for Chief? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I learned quite a bit tonight, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hopefully I didn't talk too fast. If anyone thinks of any questions,
Start.
you go back to slide 2.
So
No.
restart.
I don't see, Sean, did you have any questions? I can't see you online.
No, I don't,
Okay.
but I've seen this presentation
He probably knows it
And of
better.
course, he
10
took
years.
to go up tonight.
But I appreciate Sean being there. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yep. Beth?
Yeah, I will say I appreciate the little tidbit about the homeowners insurance and the value to residents by having a charge, because that kind of helps
Mhm.
make it a little more palatable for people to understand things.
There's some areas out east where WSRB has re-rated them and their homeowners insurance has went up significantly.
Mhm.
And then they said, why did my insurance go up? And we have a nice discussion with them. And they say, well, I wish I would have voted for that tax. It would have been cheaper for me to pay a little more in tax than to pay what I'm paying in my homeowner's insurance. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you again very much for being here. Really appreciate it.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a great evening. All right, next is our first of two public comment periods. Speakers will state their name, organization, and whether they are a Covington resident. Comments are directed to city council, not the audience or staff. Comments are to be related to city business. Thank you, Joe. Comments are not intended for conversation or debate and are limited to 4 minutes per speaker. For attendees participating by Zoom, click the raise hand button. For attendees participating by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. Once the city grants permission to speak, press unmute in Zoom or dial *6 to unmute by phone. And before I call on names, we do have 4 public hearings tonight. If you're here to speak to the fiscal budget, Transportation Improvement District or Transportation Improvement Program, the Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority 6-year capital improvement plan, or the Kent School District capital facilities plan, hold your comments to the public hearing. Otherwise, I will call on names. And first is Emma. Approach the podium and just state your name and whether you are a resident or not. Okay,
So my name is Emma Lehman and I am a Covington resident.
My name is Samira Omer and I'm also a Covington resident.
thank you.
One of the things we wanted to talk about today was about the youth city council and kind of that outreach. I noticed you guys had an outreach program for the younger youth, but not so much the high school age youth.
Yeah, and us as student, I feel like we feel very strongly about our voices also being heard as we are the upcoming adults and we are soon going to face the society.
So we wanted to know, we wanted to like put out there more of a way to show like high school students more about the youth council. The only reason I know about it is because I happened to be at a meeting almost a year ago for a roadside cleanup and I was learning about it. And I feel like that is something really important, especially for more high school students to know about. Because I feel like if you're not involved or correlated with the people currently on the youth council, getting on it or knowing about it is a lot more challenging than it seems. So more community involvement with high school age students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Sarah and Binti, did you wish to speak?
Hi, I'm Binti Abdi, and I'm not a Covington resident. And my topic is, what are some ways you guys are ensuring you guys' neighborhood so that you guys are keeping the neighborhood safe and a place where everybody is protected?
This is just for, we don't answer questions. This is just for you to ask questions. Is there anybody wishing to address council this evening? Is there anybody online wishing to address council? Seeing nobody else approach the dais or the podium or raise their hand, this public comment period is over and we will have a second opportunity. And if you'd like to ask questions after council, we're happy to answer. Next is the approval of the consent agenda, items C1 through C7.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Next up is the first public hearing. Tonight, we have a public hearing to receive testimony from the public regarding the fiscal year 2025 budget. This being the date set and proper notices having been posted and published in accordance with state and local law. This public hearing is hereby declared open. And Casey?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. There's no formal staff report tonight. This is just one of the 2 required public hearings that we will have for the budget this year. And it's just for the public to ask any questions and for council to do any further deliberations or ask me any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address council concerning the proposed fiscal year 2025 budget? Is there anybody online wishing to address council? Seeing that nobody has approached the podium or nobody's raised their hand, I declare this public hearing closed. Does council have any questions for Casey? All right, thank you. Next, we will move into our second public hearing. Tonight, we have a public hearing to receive testimony from the public regarding the proposed and revised 2025 to 2030 six-year transportation improvement program and consider a resolution to adopt the amended plan. This being the date set and proper notices having been posted and published in accordance with state and local law, the public hearing is hereby declared open. And Bob, are you giving the report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you for allowing me this opportunity. This evening, we are proposing a revised 2025 to 2030 six-year transportation improvement plan. On October 8th, 2024, the city was selected to receive grant funding through FHWA's Highway Safety Improvement Program. In order to receive these grant funds, the projects must be included in our six-year TIP and subsequently added to the state TIP. In order to amend the six-year TIP, the same public process must occur that we typically conduct in May or June. The new project we are proposing is titled Systemic Safety Pedestrian Improvements. It involves Southeast 256th Street and 180th Avenue Southeast locations. It aims at installing radar speed feedback signs, an asphalt path, and rectangular rapid flashing beacons for pedestrian crossings. In your packets, you will note that we prioritize this project as our second project. This was mostly decided because of the 2025 availability of funds and when we expect we could use them. The radar speed feedback locations are proposed at Southeast 256th Street near 156th Avenue Southeast. The asphalt path and extruded curb is proposed at 180th Avenue Southeast between Southeast 244th Street and Southeast 242nd Street. And a pedestrian crossing with rectangular rapid flashing beacons is proposed at Southeast 244th Street. Other than this addition, we are proposing no other changes. At this time, I could open it up to questions and guidance. If there are no further concerns, council could move to public comment and potentially to passing the resolution adopting this amended 2025 to 2023 six-year TIP. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Can't ask questions to the public hearing.
Oh, thank you.
Ground rules for public comment during the public hearing are as follows. When your name is called, step up to the microphone, give your name and state whether you are a resident of the city of Covington. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address council concerning the 2025 to 2030 six-year transportation improvement program? Is there anybody online wishing to ask questions? Seeing nobody approach the podium or raise their hand, I declare this public hearing closed. And then, right, I get Jennifer, go ahead.
Hey, Bob, what is timing on number 1029?
Basically, we have to get it in the state TIP.
Bob, can you please go up to microphone? Sorry.
Basically, this is the first process that should happen by the end of the year. And then in February, they'll evaluate it for putting it on the state TIP. And we can't obligate the funds until after it's on the state TIP.
And those have to be used by 2025 or?
No,
fixed
just
again?
obligated
Okay.
and started.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sean, you had a question?
Yeah, hey, Bob. My question is on the same 1029. I appreciate this. This is good news, and I'm happy to see that there'll be additional traffic mitigation measures put on 256 in anticipation of the new Lake Point being brought online. One of the radar signs, if I understand correctly, will be near Covington Elementary School. Will that, the speed limit will be 45 or 40, excuse me, along there, regardless of whether school is in or out of session. Is that correct? It'll,
Well, actually, I believe it's a 20 mile per hour speed when children are present.
okay, so will that radar sign reflect that changing speed limit? So non-school times, will it be at 40? And then during school time, will it go, you're speeding if you're going over 20?
Yeah, potentially we could do
Right.
that, or we could just feed back the speed that people are going.
Yeah, yeah, I see if we could be more specific, and let people know that they are in a school zone, active school zone, and that they're going over the speed limit if that's possible with that radar. So great, I appreciate it. This is good.
Thank you.
Does council have any other questions for Bob?
Can I actually ask a clarifying question on that? Is the speed,
Is your
Radar.
microphone on?
is the radar going to be on 256 or on 156?
On 256.
Okay, so if I'm correct, there is no school zone there.
There is.
Even on 256?
Yeah, a couple years ago, we extended the school zones to include southeast
And there are-
256 and 300 feet either side of the intersection.
And there's flashing beacons that say.
There's
school
not
zone?
flashing
That's what you were
beacons.
talking. Okay, that's confusing almost, because
Yeah, the flashing beacons only sit on 156.
Right.
Southbound, it's after.
And
the
that's super
intersection.
clear.
Yeah,
I wonder if there's something we could, I'm used to seeing flashing something,
yeah, we just have aluminum signs for westbound, eastbound, and southbound.
okay. Maybe it's.
I would
food
love
for
the
thought.
flashing
I know,
beacons,
maybe
yeah.
food for thought, but just if it's something that we can do, but those are very obvious. I think it's almost easy to miss something. There's just so many flashing beacons now around schools where that's what I'm used to. I honestly, I could, and I drive there all the time. I didn't even know they were there. I always slow down because I know the school is there. It's my territory, but it would be nice to have a conversation about that in the future.
Yeah, we should also start looking at the old Tahoma High School too, on
Well,
240.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, because I'm sure most people that drive on 256 don't even realize that it's a school zone.
Sorry, but this is my stomping grounds and I didn't.
Anybody else have any questions for Bob? Beth?
Yeah, just to clarify that, is the opportunity to put that speed radar sign near the school zone sign so that
Yeah,
at least it
yeah,
provides some kind of a visual.
ideally, yeah, and
Okay.
we still have to go through design.
Okay.
And vetting all that out.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Bob, thank you very much for a
Thank
great
you.
presentation. Okay, council, before us is the potential to pass a resolution adopting the amended City of Covington 2025-2030 6-year transportation improvement program.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Beth, would you like to speak to your motion?
I would, we consistently get feedback from residents, from, even the middle schoolers and elementary schoolers that are on 180th at, Crestwood Elementary. They've talked to us about how concerned they are with having safe paths, safe sidewalks, and, being able to add those to our tip, it's that thing about having voice being heard and having us relay that to staff and having them act on that. So appreciate all the work they did in getting these grant funds and getting the tip updated so that we can get those implemented.
Thanks, Beth. Jennifer, would you like to speak to your second?
Yeah, definitely. This is really great. I'm glad. I think it was 2 out of 3 of our requests were funded by this grant opportunity. So kudos to the city for continuing to look for ways to pay for things to increase our resident safety.
Anybody else? Thank you, Jennifer. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to pass a resolution adopting the amended City of Covington 2025-2030 6-year transportation improvement program. All those in favor state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next is public hearing number 3. Tonight we have a public hearing to receive testimony from the public regarding the proposed ordinance adopting the Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority 6-year capital improvement plan for 2025 to 2030, the 2025 fire impact fee schedule, and the 2030 Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority mitigation and level of service policy, amending the capital facilities and utilities element, appendix, and existing conditions of the Covington Comprehensive Plan to include the same, and adopting findings of fact, providing for severability and establishing an effective date. This being the date set and proper notices having been posted and published in accordance with state and local law, this public hearing is hereby declared open. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address council concerning this public hearing? Is there anybody online wishing to address council? Seeing nobody approach the podium or raise their hand, I declare this public hearing closed. And Selena, do you want to? Sorry, I skipped the part.
I was like, oh, they don't need me tonight.
Well, we had a great presentation by Chief Powell. Sorry.
I was just sitting back. Good evening, council. This is the first hearing we have tonight related to impact fees. This one is with the Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority. They evaluate their 6-year plan every year. And as a result of that, we have to update our comprehensive plan because we adopt their plan by reference. And then this practice serves two purposes. Firstly, it engages in our comprehensive planning, right? So our comp plan sets the goals for how we accommodate growth. And this plan is part of that. This falls under our capital planning. And that our plans for growth must align with our fire authority's plans for growth. And the purpose of that is so that we can service our community effectively. Secondly, we are legally obligated to adopt their capital program into our comprehensive plan because we collect fire impact fees on their behalf. We have an ILA that extends that authority to us. So after evaluating their capital program, we accept their findings. They are concurrent with what we've just been going through with our comprehensive plan. And so it's anticipated that their services are evolving to meet our demands effectively. The impact fees are imposed on new developments, right? To fund that additional resource needed to meet the growth. So development pays for development. They pay their proportionate share of that. And those are collected at the time of building permit issuance. So there's a bunch of detailed information in Exhibit 1A that's related to their capital plan. And we have the fire service here tonight to dive into that if you have specific questions. But before you tonight is an ordinance to adopt the capital improvement plan into our comprehensive plan, including their level of service policy. And then also the decision tonight will be incorporated into the 2025 fee resolution, which will be coming to you in December. So your decision tonight will inform that next step for the resolution. So I'll take any questions if needed.
Thank you, Selena. Does anybody have any questions for Selena? All right, council, before us is the option to pass an ordinance in substantial form. Is that attached here to adopting the updated Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority 6-year capital improvement plan for 2025 through 2030, the 2025 fire impact fee schedule, and the 2025 mitigation and level of service policy, and amending the capital facilities and utilities element, appendix, and existing conditions report of the city's comprehensive plan to include the same. Is there a motion to approve? We have two different motions to do, but this is the first one. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Beth, would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, you know, Selena pretty much hit the nail on the head. We have to adopt this just because of the mandates of Growth Management Act. And I know that we have a very capable RFA and they look at what is necessary to provide service to our residents, and especially with the increased density that's coming along. I know they're looking at all of those ways to keep our neighbors safe.
Christina, would you like to speak to your second?
I think Beth said it wisely and I It's our due diligence. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? It's been moved and seconded to pass an ordinance in substantial form as that attached hereto, adopting the updated Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority 6-year capital improvement plan for 2025 through 2030, 2025 fire impact fee schedule, and the 2025 mitigation and level of service policy, and amending the capital facilities and utilities element, the appendix, and existing conditions report of the city's comprehensive plan to include the same. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. The second is to adopt the potential to adopt the 2025 fire impact fee to be incorporated into the 2025 fee resolution as adopted by the city council. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Jennifer, would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure. Obviously, it's in our best interest to ensure that as we grow and that as costs go up, that we're ensuring that our firefighters are fully funded to keep us safe. So fully support.
Thank you, Jennifer. Joe, would you like to speak to your second?
I'd just like to echo what Jennifer said.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? It's been moved and seconded to adopt the 2025 fire impact fee to be incorporated into the 2025 fee resolution as adopted by the city council. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. Next up is the fourth public hearing. Tonight, we have a public hearing to receive testimony from the public regarding and considering a proposed ordinance adopting the Kent School District 6-year capital facilities plan for 2023, 2024 to 2029 to 2030, and the 2025 school impact fee schedule, amending the capital facilities and utilities element, the appendix, and existing conditions report of the Covington Comprehensive Plan to include the same, adopting findings of fact, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date. This being the date set and proper notices having been posted and published in accordance with state and local law, hereby declare this public hearing open. And Selena, I won't skip you this time, sorry.
Okay. Going to be very similar. This second hearing is the similar process as the fire, except that it is for the Kent School District. Similarly, the Kent School District updates their capital plan annually, and then we adopt that into our comprehensive plan by reference. Part of that is because they provide services to Covington. They are the school district within Covington. And also we are required to, under state law and through our ILA with them. For 2025, it remains the school district will continue to collect 0 impact fees in 2025. The reason for not collecting these is that they continue to do a capacity study, and I don't know if you were able to thumb through those last few pages of their finance plan, but they do have some capacity, some enrollment changes that are not needing any additional school facility. And one thing to remember with school impact fees that it's really the brick and mortar, right? This doesn't pay for lunches. It doesn't pay for computers. It pays for portables and brick and mortar. So the Kent School District doesn't have any plans to build anything new on their facility. And they have found within their existing budget between what monies they have for impact fees and any bonds and levies that they have that they could accommodate what they need. And that's outlined in their finance plan. And so because of that, then there is no share that the public needs to have to accommodate that enrollment because their enrollment is proportionate to what they're getting. And so they would continue to be at 0 in 2025. So again, after evaluating their program, we are recommending that we accept their capital improvement plan, adopt that into our comp plan, and then again, bringing back the fee resolution for 2025, showing 0 impact fee for single family and multifamily housing.
Thank you, Selena. The ground rules for public comment during the public hearing are as follows. Step up to the microphone, give your name and state whether you're a resident of the city of Covington, and please limit your comments to 4 minutes. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address council concerning this item? Is there anybody online wishing to address council? Seeing nobody approach the podium or raise their hand, I declare this public hearing closed. Does council have any questions for Selena concerning the Kent School District capital facilities and impact fee? All right. Thank you, Selena. Council, before us is the potential to pass an ordinance in substantial form is that attached here to adopting the updated Kent School District 6-year capital facilities plan for 2023-24 through 2029-2030 and the 2025 school impact fee schedule, and amending the capital facilities and utilities element, the appendix, and existing conditions report of the city's comprehensive plan to include the same. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Debbie, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that there are no impact fee impacting Covington in this upcoming year. And it looks like their enrollment really isn't expected to go up until about 2026. So I suppose a year from now, we may look at this differently, but I appreciate that there's no impact fee at this time.
Thank you, Debbie. Beth, would you like to speak to your second?
No, Debbie said it.
Okay. Thank you, Beth. Is there anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? It's been moved and seconded to pass an ordinance in substantial form. Is that attached here too? Adopting the updated Kent School District 6-year capital facilities plan for 2023 to 2024 through 2029-2030 and the 2025 school impact fee schedule, and amending the capital facilities and utilities element, the appendix, and existing conditions report of the city's comprehensive plan to include the same. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. The second potential action tonight is to adopt the 2025 school impact fee to be incorporated into the 2025 fee resolution as adopted by the city council. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Christina, would you like to speak to your motion?
Without sounding redundant, I appreciate that we don't have an increase, and that it is built, the zero is built into the 25 fee resolution. I'll go back to the previous one and just say that there are many Covington students that are within the Kent School District. Some of them are here. Our hope is that they have top-notch education and everything they need. And if they are at capacity and not exceeding, well then, kudos to them for not needing more buildings.
Thank you, Christina. Jennifer, would you like to speak to your second?
No, thank you.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? Excuse me. It's been moved and seconded to adopt 2025 school impact fee to be incorporated into the 2025 fee resolution as adopted by the city council. All those in favor state aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you all very much. That concludes all 4 of our public hearings. Next is new business item number 5. Consider approving the human services funding allocation recommendations for the 2025-2026 human services grant funds. Julie, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me tonight. All right, so you're all familiar with the funding application process for the Human Services Commission. But on the blue sheet, you'll see some details specifically for 25 and 26, so next year and the following year. And that process began in May of 2024 with the acceptance of 48 applications. And the Human Services Commission then reviewed those applications throughout the summer and made final funding recommendations, as you see before you tonight. Those recommendations came from a thorough review of the applications themselves. There were specific merits that they were looking for each agency to include historical performance, the cost of service per client, fiscal responsibility, best use of our tax dollars, and how they aligned with the Human Services Commission funding priorities. and what you see tonight before you is the final 25 recommendations for the funding, the selected programs that the commission had decided to put before you. And the base budget, as you can see, is 136.5, and that's kind of what we were working with this particular cycle. As you see on the exhibit or the attachment, the dollar amounts are broken out specifically for each agency, and you can kind of see that there. So I'm available for questions or any comments.
Thank you, Julie. I'm used to having a joint session with the Human Services in October before we bring this forward to us. So does council have any questions? Joe?
Yeah, I'm looking at this and comparing last year to this year, I'm noticing there's a few that we usually have funded from from Human Services that are just not funded this year. And I was wondering, like we've always had some sort of funding go towards Catholic Community Services. We've had some funding. I know we do a different funding source to Vine Maple Place, but there's always been a little something coming from the Human Services. So I was just wondering what's going on there. And I'm not seeing, no, there's Dawn, never mind. I'm just feeling like there's a lot that historically we've funded that's not necessarily there anymore. I'm just wondering what the thought process was on that from the Human Services Commission.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So the commission took a bunch of information into consideration, from the Central Human Services Assessment, to also having Darren present there, informing what agencies also support his program. So those two things were kind of taken into consideration, as well as the fact that we no longer have the ARPA funding. We're back to our 136.5. And so the commission felt they had to be very intentional about the recommendations that they made. Once they learned that the 1406 funds were allocated to Vine Maple Place, and given the reduction in funding, they felt that Vine Maple Place had received at least some money, quite a bit of money from 1406, and therefore you'll see it not listed. So just kind of trying to work with the dollars that we've had, and to look towards the priorities of the commission, informed by the council, or I'm sorry, from the Human Services Assessment and Darren's program.
Anybody else? Joe?
Just to follow up, I'm looking at it again, and we have two that are listed as Crisis Connections, formerly Crisis Clinic. Are we funding the same organization twice at two different amounts, or is that two separate?
Yeah,
two separate things?
that's a great question. I'd have to look. I don't have it in front of me right this second. But those are two different programs within that organization. And so one of them, I believe, is 211, and the other one is Teen Link.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how that was allocated.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer?
Sure.
Hey, Julie, I was curious if the YMCA of Greater Seattle recommendation was still specified to Arcadia House. I know that was on the listing last year, and so I was curious if it was the same, or if maybe this time it was more broad.
Nope, it is Arcadia House.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so
Yep.
much.
Debbie?
Thank you. So thank you, Julie. And question about Medical Teams International. And I think just because of the name of that, I did some research, and I understand that they do provide medical and dental services in areas that are within the United States, and probably
Right.
specifically in our area. So I just wanted to clarify that, correct? That would be for dental services here in the Covington community.
It definitely will be. They've received also funding from King County Public Health. So they're looking to do work directly in Covington, providing mobile dental clinics in Covington. And I would work with them to develop the outlines of that contract and what service units would look like. But yes, that would be directly for Covington.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question, and that's on Meals on Wheels. Would that be then the first time that those services have been available for Covington? I'm trying to find the name of the program. I apologize.
That's okay. The Sound Generations Meals on Wheels.
Mhm.
No, that we funded them for a while.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Beth or Christina? I have a question. I noticed that, now I trust our Human Services Commission and what they're bringing to us, because they've done the homework. They've gone through 48 applications and narrowed it down to 25, based on the funding needs of our city's residents. I do have a question about Catholic Community Services safe car parking, because that was brought up as a concern last month. And I don't see it on here unless it's under a different name.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Covington residents are not, I'm sorry, that's not the right answer. Those that are found in the city limits in Covington, living in their vehicles, are not able to access services at Catholic Community Services, as we discussed in our study session. And Catholic Community Services safe car parking also takes vehicles from all over King County. So those spaces are very few and far between. So as far as funding that agency, it didn't quite make sense for us if we're not able to access spots. And so that's kind of the answer to that at a high level.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Beth?
I guess I was looking at the St. Stephen Housing Association. Maybe I thought that was the same thing and that it was just maybe a new organization. Is that? I'm not familiar with, are they doing some of that work, or is that just, is it part of the Safe Car program, or is that something completely different?
Yeah, it's completely different. It's shelter and housing in Renton. So pretty close to us. I think it's about 20-ish minutes away, but yeah, they do, it's a completely different program that focuses on shelter.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Jennifer?
Mayor, will we be having the meeting, or is this it this year?
So we do have a joint session with Human Services on December 12th. The 10th, the first, yeah, Tuesday, the 10th. So, yeah, that's where we normally can get more information. So it was moved to December 10th instead of October. Joe?
This is a question, and I haven't read the room on what everyone's on, but could we is there a issue if we were to table this until December 10th so we can talk with the Human Services about some of these decisions? Because I feel like this is the first time that we've had this in front of us without having a conversation with them to get more of dipping our toes in that water to find out why they went at these rates, so we can get a better understanding. So I would like to talk with them about some of their ideas on why certain things were funded at certain levels. What didn't they fund? Why get that information? Is that or do I have to make a motion to do? I know we have to make a motion for something, but I just don't know where that motion has to come from.
So, can I ask a clarifying question for Casey and Regan? So if council were to wish to postpone the decision on this until December 10th after the joint meeting, is that going to make it difficult to pass the budget the same night of December 10th?
Not if the dollar amount stays the same. If the dollar amount stays the same, I don't.
Okay.
The 136.5.
Okay. Okay.
I will just add, although you haven't met with the Human Service Commission yet, that's why Julie's here to answer any of the questions you might have from the commission. But if you want to postpone, we can still do that.
Yeah,
I'm good with whatever anyone wants, but I just wanted to throw that as an option.
I always like to hear more from the Human Services Commission, but the Human Services Commission did review all of this. And you said April, Julie, is when they started getting the applications?
Yeah, in the
So-
spring.
Basically 7 months, 6 months of time reviewing all of these to narrow it down to 25 with what's best for our residents. So I fully trust what is being presented to us by the Human Services Commission, because this is coming through them. But I will leave it up to council what they would like to do, if they would like to move forward with the motion tonight and then ask more questions. Because the main thing that's in our budget is to just approve the final amount of 136.5, and the Human Services Commission also helps decide where those funds get spent. So,
I have an
Jennifer.
additional question.
yes, Jennifer.
So I was not on council when the safe car parking at St. John's was established. However, I recall as a community member, there were lots of meetings. There was even like some kind of, I feel like contractual manifesto or something between our police and the church. And so I'm curious if we're not funding the program, are there any other consequences that aren't being discussed right now?
With that MOU.
MOU, that's what it was. Thank you.
Yeah,
I knew it started with an M.
it's an MOU with no enforcement provisions in it. Because it's a ministry, there's not a lot we can do at all unless it's fire, life, safety stuff. So it was really just kind of agreement that, hey, we'll be here if you need us, they'll be here if we need them, kind of thing. So no enforcement, no issues with what you're
With them
suggesting.
continuing the program in absence of our funding.
Yeah, they don't need that to continue operating.
Okay, thank you so much.
Julie, then Sean.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, the chair of the Human Services Commission is in the audience tonight. So I don't know if it makes sense for him to speak during public comment, not to put him on the spot, but he is available in the audience tonight, and I don't know if that makes a difference for anyone.
Okay. May I ask Sean real quick? Sean, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wondered, I probably know the answer to this. Are there, Julie, any, if we decide to delay, are there any critical needs that would be impacted by delaying our decision till December?
As far as the critical needs, no, the contracts expire on December 31st. And so we would need to have something, decided by then, but yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it would be an issue.
Okay, and then for staff, does it make any difference if we approve it tonight or in December on getting those funds released to the appropriate entities with only, 21 days till the end of the year?
No difference as long as that 136.5 stays the same. If that
Okay.
changes, that would disrupt our budget approval.
Great, thank you.
So, this counts, well, actually, before I put you on the spot, would you be willing to answer? Okay. Does council have any, so Brian Chandler, the chair of the Human Services Commission, is present. Does council have any questions they would like to ask Brian, or would you like to wait until a joint session? Is there any, I mean, Julie's answered a lot of the questions, but is there anything additional you'd like to ask Brian?
Mr. Mayor?
If we're going to delay, I mean, I have additional questions, but if we're gonna talk about it later, I will ask them.
Exactly.
But
Okay.
if this is our chance, then I do have.
Okay. Yes,
If
Sean.
that makes sense.
Oh, I was just gonna make the counter argument that since the chair is here, and we're looking at it, why don't we ask our questions now?
Yeah.
And if for some whatever reason hear from him, we still want to delay the vote, we can do that.
Okay.
But I would suggest ask your questions now.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. You willing to, Brian? Okay, why don't you come on up to the podium? You're not gonna be grilled, it's just,
Yeah, you are.
Well, maybe.
Rough crowd.
okay. Jennifer, you had questions first?
I do. Specifically, this time is about ANEW. Why are we not continuing to fund that organization?
Julie, I don't have any of that data in front of me, Julie. has.
Yeah, so unfortunately, their service units were not reaching Covington. I actually got to the point where I had to reclaim funds from them because their service units were so low. I know they've been trying to do advertising and outreach in Covington, but for whatever reason, their numbers just aren't where they need to be. And so unfortunately, with our limited funding, they kind of fell a little bit on the back burner.
Okay, thank you. Right. I mean, I just think.
No,
that's a
it's okay.
great
I can
program.
say this that maybe answers some of that, like how we made our decisions with throughout the months, looking at exactly that, who are servicing. One of the greatest attributes to this whole process was Darren. And also the impact of the organization that I work with too, that works in the Covington area, is who is providing the best services and the quality of services to our Covington residents. And then some of it was based on the Central University's data and what they found out about what is the best needs that our community or what we were lacking. So some of it came from that. But all of our research, whether it was research through 211, it was all the research that we did to just identify, are the people that we're funding servicing the people in the city of Covington? And are they meeting the needs, whether it was past or what's their plan in the future? And so Anu was one of those moving forward in the future, as well as the card camping. There just wasn't anything moving forward. We couldn't see with, and I can say it without getting fired, she can't. We had over $500,000 worth of contracts that we had to dwindle down to 136,000. That was hard work because all of us wanted to fund everybody that was in that booklet. We all wanted to fund them because their service and past relationships, but we just couldn't. And so it was hard work trying to figure out who. It was just based, it came down to who's servicing the people in our community and who's helping us move forward and who's meeting our goals, helping us meet our goals, and are they aligned with our goals in how we made our decisions. So
Yeah, I
hopefully
was
that
happy
helps.
to see some new organizations
Yeah.
on here.
Yeah.
That's great. I Googled them all. It's amazing how many organizations are out there doing work to support those mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good to see some with behavioral health and especially children with behavioral health and the dental and all of those was fantastic to see. Especially for me, it's my first year being involved in this process, be able to see the services and the amount of services and the quality of services that we have coming to our Covington residents it was astonishing for me. So it was amazing.
And then, so I think my last question, Children's Therapy Center. Why, I mean, is that a similar not serving Covington residents?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just based on what they had projected to us. And here again, we have the application, but then we did research and data beyond that to find out. And again, somebody else is providing that service. So you have them and somebody else is providing a similar service. It's who's servicing more people in the city of Covington. And that's how we had to make our decisions as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Jennifer. Sean?
Yeah, sorry, I had to get off mute. Could you just quickly reiterate the criteria that were used to vet these different groups? I think it'd be good for the record just to have what the Human Services Commission used to help prioritize these different groups.
I can speak to that.
Great.
So we have a rating tool that has 9 different or 10 different quantitative responses. So going through the applications, the commissioners ranked the applications based off of the 9 quantitative criteria, and I can dig up the rating tool. It'll take me a second, but and then there's also qualitative portion to the rating tool. And so going through that and writing out, how are they serving the Covington community? What's their relationship been like things like that. The rating tool had a quantitative and qualitative components to it. And so those were kind of utilized to help make these decisions. If you wanted a copy of that rating tool, I'm again happy to share it or show you the details.
Sean?
Yeah, I just think it would be good for the record of this meeting, just to make sure we have those in there if we're asked. And then just in follow-up, I know at our last meeting, when Julie, we met with you and Darren, we talked about the Central Washington's survey and how that could potentially impact funding going forward. So 2 questions. One, did it impact? And if it did, current funding, if it did, how so? And if not, how are we going to adjust funding just broadly going forward to address those gaps that were identified by Central? Do you need me to repeat those?
I don't think so. Brian, do you want me to answer that or do you want to try
Yeah,
to
I mean,
answer?
I can speak to it. Yeah, I mean, it made a huge impact into the decisions. They came right before we made the final recommendations and shared their data and shared their information with us. And based on the needs, especially specifically around community, housing, behavioral health, some of those components, it reiterated some of the decisions that we had already made, which gave us great confidence that we had really done well at identifying what our community needed, but also it helped us to make some adjustments to understand that, hey, we didn't have as much money into the housing component as we would like to. So Arcadia, some of those other places, to be able to fund some of those. So yeah, it made a big difference.
Thank you. Anybody else? Christina?
Yeah.
And then Beth.
Thank you. The more I listen, the more I realize just how much work went into this. We can sit here and ask questions all night long, but this is months of work. We don't have that rating tool. Our human services does. And they had Seattle's I'm sorry.
Seattle's Union Gas Commission.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Yes. And anyway, long story short, I don't think that we could change anything from where, when our human services feels comfortable and confident, like you just said. I trust their decision. I would like to go forward and maybe just hear about what, probably for our curiosity more than anything, because I don't believe that anything that we will say tonight will change what's on this paper. There has been a lot of thought, just a lot of dwelling on it and brainstorming, and I am confident in human services and I'm ready to make a motion, but I
Appreciate
you
that.
do that and let Beth ask a question. I'll go back to you.
Well,
okay.
can I speak to what you
Yes.
said? I serve on other human service commissions in other cities. And by far, this is the best. And the reason why is because every person that's on this commission has so much compassion. It's just unbelievable. There's tears, there was frustration, there was emotions, just wanting to get it right and wanted to be able to provide those services. And it was a grueling, but it was a fun process because it served with a lot of people that really care about you guys and about our city. So
Thank you.
thanks.
Beth.
I guess the one last one that I wanted to ask about is the Institute for Community Leadership. That was a $7,000 grant, and can you explain how we landed on that one? Simply
Yeah,
because the description wouldn't.
Yeah, one of the
sound
great
right.
things that I love more than anything about being on the commissions, we get to go see these places. We get to experience. When we went there and saw the impact that they had on kids, it blew us away. They have this huge impact, and it's specific to Covington. I mean, it sits right behind a school. And the work that they're doing, how they're building up these young people, how they're helping them to identify what do they want to do with their life. And then they're coming beside and they're walking with them in leadership and developing. A lot of them are going into the work that I do. And so it was so cool to see that development.
So what objective does that reach? Like which bucket of help, like food, shelter, housing, place to go so that they feel supported? Like mental health, is that kind of what we're?
Yeah, I think, it fits into a lot of those buckets. It fits into the behavioral health or some of that is in that leadership piece. They're helping them not just to move forward in their life, but they're helping them to identify the education. So they're helping them move to self-sufficiency in their life and to build confidence.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Christina.
I move to approve the recommendations made by the Human Services Commission for 2025 and 26 Human Services grants as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Christina, would you like to speak to your motion?
I'm very proud of our Human Services and everything they do. Like you said, they're compassionate, they're smart, and I trust their decisions.
Thank you, Christina. Deb, would you like to speak to your second?
Thank you. I also wanted to say that I appreciate that we cut the funding in half, not because we wanted to, but because of where our budget constraints were. And so, and thank you, Brian, for your description of how that vetting process went. And you had several months. It sounded like you put a lot of due diligence, a lot of thought into this. And Julie as well. I appreciate what you've done and I support the recommendation.
And just to clarify, we didn't cut the funding in half. We just don't have the ARPA funds to add.
Well, correct. But we gave them half, yes, well stated. They had half of which to work with.
Our
There you go.
federal ARPA
Yes.
funds.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? Beth?
I would support moving forward with the motion. And I think one other thing to add, if anyone is looking at the chart, we do have Vine Maple Place that receives funding from a different funding source. And so it doesn't look, well, you add another $45,000 to that amount as to what the Human Services Commission is helping, and the community kind of helps make it look a little bit better. But I appreciate all the work they do. The big binder that Catherine's been toting around all year with all you all know. You guys do amazing.
Anybody else wish to speak for or against? I just want to say, Brian, Julie, and the entire Human Services Commission appreciate all the hard work that went into this. And when I brought up wanting to meet with the commission prior is not to change what's being presented, it's just to get more clarification. And Julie and Brian, you were able to do that tonight, so thank you.
Yes.
And I look forward to being able to speak more with our human service, as long as you guys aren't too worn out from having to go through 45 applications in December. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the recommendations made by the Human Services Commission for 2025, 2026 Human Services grants as presented. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Next is new business item number 6. Consider appointment to the Equity, Cultural, and Social Justice Commission. Does council wish to take action tonight?
I move to appoint Carolyn Walker to fill position number 3 on the Equity, Cultural, and Social Justice Commission with a term expiring September 30th, 2026.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Beth, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I was quite impressed with Carolyn's interview. She has a wealth of experience in her career. And she has very interesting perspectives on what equity and social justice means. I especially appreciated her answer when she was giving a couple of examples of her personal life and an experience her daughter went through in the school. And when she was advocating for diversity and inclusion, she said that it wasn't just about what her daughter was going through or even the rest of the students in the class, but it's setting the stage to help make the future better. And I think that's shown that it isn't just about, we like folks that think not only about their situation, but the community at large. And she brought up some very good reminders about creating safe space for anybody to be able to bring up their concerns and making themselves feel like they're valued and that their concerns are just as important as anybody else. So I could go on. She had a fantastic.
Thanks, Beth. Debbie, would you like to speak to your second?
Thank you. I agree. Carolyn was very impressive. And in her professional experience and in her life experiences, she really has the right qualifications and attributes that we would look for in this commission. And she's very understanding of the need to listen well to others and listening to others from different cultures and with different backgrounds, and not cutting any one segment out. I feel that she'll do a great job with this commission.
Thank you, Debbie. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? I just wanted to add that listening to Carolyn speak, she had a lot of compassion and empathy that she will bring to this commission, and I'm looking forward to having her on this commission if council so chooses. So it's been moved and seconded to appoint Carolyn Walker to fill position number 3 on the Equity, Cultural, and Social Justice Commission with a term expiring September 30th, 2026. All those in favor, state aye.
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 Any opposed? Congratulations, Carolyn. Next is new business item number 7 is consider an ordinance amending Title 19 impact fees to update the imposition of park impact fee and set the Covington Park impact fee. Selena.
Good evening, council. I'm going to be doing this presentation with my friend Ethan tonight as well. So we'll be riffing off of each other. We do have a presentation, so if you just give me one moment here, I will get that loaded. The presentation tonight is going to focus a little bit more on like the actual discussion around what the impact fee should be or could be. I do want to point out in the blue sheet why this is loading that there's really 2 actions or requests that we have of council tonight. One is obviously if we can land or get general alignment on the percentage for impact fee, then Ethan and I can go back and incorporate that into the fee resolution. The second part of tonight is actually the ordinance itself that has some minor amendments to one, mostly just update the language to be more broad. So as we do capital plans every 5 to 7 years through the PROS plan, we're not having to update the code all the time. Before we were very specific in what we called out. Now we broaden that. And then there's a few additional exemptions and minor reductions that we want to add to the park impact fee as well. And we can talk a little bit more about that as we progress tonight. So I think that is sharing.
Yep.
Okay. So again, just to reiterate what I just said, I do want to point out that if we don't find or get to land a decision tonight, that's okay. Ethan and I are prepared to come back. We will probably most likely come back in early January. That is also okay from an impact fee. If a couple come in before that imposition of any new impact fee, the existing impact fee would stand. And so obviously the council can give us direction and questions tonight, but I don't think we would aim for December. That is looking pretty full. And so we may be coming back. Yeah. So we'll try to come back in January. So I say all of that to say no pressure. Let's just have really good discussion. And we're here to answer your questions tonight. Tonight is the night of impact fees. So just to give you a really rough background, impact fees are outlined in the state statute. They're in RCW 8202020 through, 110. And basically this is a funding structure. It's a supplemental funding structure that allows cities to collect impact fees to offset the cost of growth. Right. So again, similar like we talked about with school impact fees and fire impact fees, is they pay their proportionate share. Growth pays for growth. And under the law that says that cities cannot charge the development community 100% of that cost. Right. But you can charge a percentage from 1 to 99. Technically, most cities are kind of in the ranges that we're presenting tonight. Impact fees are a one-time collection from new development. So this impact fee is paid at the time a building permit is pulled. So upon issuance. And then the the purpose of an impact fee is to maintain the level of service. So I wouldn't go out and say that this is gonna really fill our bucket, our parks bucket, but what it does do is it helps to offset some of those costs. So impact fees are generally used to provide grant matching funds. Sometimes depending on how that bucket is full, that impact fee bucket, maybe there's some early design opportunities or opportunities for us to kind of do some smaller projects, or collectively just holding and letting that money accrue and then going out and doing a larger project. And then the intention is that under the GMA, because it says that you're allowed to have growth pay for growth, the idea and the concept is that as you are growing, you are meeting those levels of services that you need to provide to your constituents as they're experiencing growth within the city. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And Mayor, I'll just pause here. I'm open if the council wants to ask questions as we go or at the end. Is there a preference for the council tonight?
If we have questions, we can go through.
Okay.
Thank you. So as you described it, the fees can be or should be used for maintaining levels of service. So where we talk about levels of service, are we talking about that we want to maintain the appearance of the park? So example, we talked last year about wanting to raise the level of service in some of the areas so that the parks were staying in, pristine condition. Because I read in one of the descriptions of what fees cannot be used for is for maintenance and operation. So that's where I'm just a little confused.
Yeah, and I'll clarify that as we go, but I'll take a run at it now because it's a great question. So you are correct. Impact fees are really to pay for new infrastructure. So like with the schools, it's brick and mortar. For parks, it's the acquisition of land and the construction of the facilities that go on that, right? It does not extend to maintenance and operations of the park. However, in kind of your broader funding, and Ethan can probably talk more about this if you want to, the idea is that it's one of many funding sources, right? So when you have more options or buckets of funds to choose from, that can help offset other funds that then go towards your maintenance and operations, right? So if you didn't have the impact fee, then you're just looking at city funds. And if they did exist, any type of alternative funding for maintenance and operation, right? But if you add in impact fees, that helps pay for your acquisition, new infrastructure, replacement of that infrastructure, and then that frees up some of your general fund money to do the maintenance levels of service. So what we're talking about is just kind of a 1-for-1. So growth goes up, do you have parks to accommodate that, right? Is there spaces for people to gather?
If I can just add to just the terminology of level of service could be used in many different ways. We've used it to describe maintenance, which I think in your example, you kind of alluded to, but level of service also can be like how many acres per 1,000 of people. And so that's how it's often used and it's being used when we talk about park impact fees. If we're providing 4 acres of park land per thousands of people, and that's our existing levels of service, as we grow in population and we still want to maintain that, we're going to have to buy up land and turn it into parks.
Great. Thank you for that explanation.
So that really goes to the second kind of column here, why impact fees are collected. So as Ethan just said, as community grows, you're meeting that need for parks and recreation. And then also that they ensure that new development is contributing fairly, right? So when we think about existing homes now, it's assumed that they've contributed, right? They either contributed when they bought their house and they paid an impact fee or otherwise with the purchase of their home, or they pay that through their taxes, right? So as new people come in, they pay their proportionate share of the demand of that growth. And so there's a couple other items here. I think I've ran through a lot of them. From where I sit in planning in the GMA world, it's really about aligning sustainable growth, right? With some ensuring that as you're growing, you're providing those services. Ethan is in charge of actually going out and building them, right? So he uses that money collected to go out and make the plan, the pros plan happen. And oftentimes we'll just say it's a delicate dance on impact fees. And there's a lot of conversations and narratives around impacts and benefits. But I like to think of it as a scale, right? So if you're reducing funding or you're kind of going below maybe something that would otherwise put you at a higher level, then just know that there's implications to that, right? Because that's one of your funding sources. So if you have 3 options and you reduce one of those, that might take you longer to get to an outcome that you want to go to. You might have to broaden a different bucket full of money. So there's a lot of ways that those come into play, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. There's a lot on this slide, but a couple things that I just want to point out. The picture up above is really the background work that goes into coming up with your capital program, which then sets what your infrastructure needs are. So that was the pros plan. So the pros plan went through and they said, we have this assumption, this forecast of growth, which we know because we're doing our comp plan, right? And for us to meet our needs, our park standards, then these are the projects, these are the scopes of the projects that we would need to have. And I think we put that in your packet, but it's in the pros plan. So this goes through all the different parks that we have planned, all the different infrastructure, land to equipment are built into that capital facilities plan. And so that was done originally in 2022 with the pros plan. We adopted it by reference in our existing comp plan so that we could have this discussion tonight, and it will fold into the 2024 comp plan. And why that's important is because your comprehensive plan must and shall be aligned with your capital needs. So I have to be able to show, hey, we've got a plan in place for parks that accommodates our growth. So it's a relationship. And here's where Ethan kind of led to this. So we have some growth assumptions that we just make. We use this in our comp planning. It's about a 2% annual growth per year over the next 20 years. We know that fluctuates, but that's a good baseline. The park service standards within the pros plan is 8 acres per 1,000 people for neighborhood and community parks with an overall service goal of 14 acres per 1,000 people, right? And so that you take a population, what is that acreage? That translates into your need, that translates into the projects that we're looking for. And then, so the other piece of this is that you have to show how you're going to finance that, right? So part of GMA says, that's great, you have a plan, but for us to be accepting that you're going to, achieve this, you need to show us how you're going to deliver those facilities. So the 2 requirements under GMA are that you have to have 6 years of reasonable assurance of availability. That is literally in quotes. And that you have capital planning at a high level that shows your trajectory towards 20 years of financing. So for us in Covington today, prior to the pros plan, we have a park impact fee, and that's up in the upper corner there. So for single family, it's a little less than 4,000. For multifamily, it's a little less than 3,000. That's a per unit cost. I don't want to dive too much into this, but I think it's worth mentioning because this isn't really an apples to apples exercise when you look at where we have to where we're going. And that what we have now is only based on land value. The impact fee that we adopted in 2017 did not account for any of the actual improvements that go into that park. So the concept at that time was like, we need to get land, okay? And part of that concept too was like, we, want to be within this range of an impact fee. So when we look at it today and say, well, $4,000 and we'll recommend going to 5, that number we have today, based on the pros plan, includes the value of the land and the infrastructure at that percentage we're recommending. So really what it comes out to is your level of service evaluation per person in the city is different this time around. And I will just want to say that the pros plan is really good because it's probably, I think Ethan and I were talking about it today, like we did a really good job in just laying it out. And it's been a while since we've seen that detail. So that makes these numbers a little bit more comfortable. As far as funding strategies, they're the same ones we talk about during the budget season. So I'll pause there. Yeah.
What is the maximum increase that we can do? You mentioned the number 1 to 99%, right? So could we literally go a 99% increase over I'm just saying theoretically, right? Okay.
Yeah, you could go up to the percentage. So it's not a percentage from what you had to where you are, right? So we're not looking at what we had to now, what's that percentage change? It's kind of like a hard stop. So in 2017, it's a snapshot. This is what we need to accommodate growth. We are now resetting that with the comprehensive plan, as many other cities are doing right now. And we have a new current state. Current state says from 2024 or 2022 for the pros plan out, this is what we need to accommodate growth. So they're very distinct. And because we don't update this year over year and annually for a lot of different reasons, which we can talk about, similar like we see with our fire and parks folks, this is really the snapshot. So the number or the percentage we choose tonight, that is going to sit as the fee until we do another capital study, either as the parks through the pros plan or the capital in the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I was just noticing though in your chart on page 425, the overview said, like, for example, proposed fee is at 70%. It is a 74% increase from the current fee.
That is a correct percentage.
Okay, right. Yeah. Right. So what is the maximum increase that we can?
There is none.
I can maybe speak to
okay,
that.
so that was something. Okay.
Yeah.
So as part of the pros plan, there's a calculation that's done based on existing level of service. And so it looks at the current population, the current investment that we've made, all the parks that we build, trails that we have. And it comes up with a figure of $9,804.86. That's 100% of what that park impact fee, I guess, cost or amount would be based off of. So the 50, 60, 70% that's in your packet is based off that $9,800.
Right. Okay. And so if we wanted to double it, we could theoretically.
I mean,
100% increase is like doubling.
Based
on the plan and what we perceive we're going to need in the future for the Jenkins Creek Trail and all of the other
Doubling
things.
the existing fee, you could, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you could.
Debbie.
Sorry. Okay, so then a question back on your previous slide about the service standards. So the park service standards, when we say park service, is that like a national organization? Not just a name?
That's
So-
our park.
Okay, so
Standards.
I think that's ours, but it's probably based on, there are national standards, National Recreational Park Association puts out some standards. So I'd have to go back to see what it's based on, but I think that's our standard in our pros plan.
okay, thank you. And then in the following bullet, it says the overall service goal is 14 acres per 1,000 people. So what drove, if the standard is 8 acres per 1,000?
So that's in that for neighborhood and community.
Oh, got it. You're okay.
So,
Thank you.
Yep.
So the 14 acres per 1,000 is for all
the open
parks.
space, natural
Okay.
areas, yeah.
Thank you.
Christina.
Thank you. We are basing these numbers to be comparable with, say, neighboring cities, correct? Or do they have different calculations? And if so, I know you couldn't speak to that, but like how could they vary so much?
Can I pause on that question? I've got a slide that's going to talk a little bit more about that, but we definitely will come back to that if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions on financing, pros plan? I'm going through this pretty quick too, so. This slide speaks a little bit to just the basics of park funding, right? So, and there's an interrelatedness between all these funding sources that the city has to pay for parks. So based on the pros plan, that's a pretty hefty number, about what is that, 278 billion? It's a lot of money. That is outlined in the pros plan to, if we were to build everything that we have planned for based on the snapshot from 2022. So we look at this as kind of having three funding opportunities. You have impact fees, which have some strengths and some limitations. The strengths is that it's pretty predictable. We know how many permits are coming in. We can do a calculation. We know how much money is going to go into that fund roughly every year, assuming all the predictions are correct. The limitations is that it's capped, right, by the state law, and you can't, you're not using it for 100% of what you need. The other piece to this is the city funds. So that can be your general fund, your capital budget, taxes, anything that you want to go out for. That is, again, another bridge that funds gaps. That supports your maintenance. Those dollars can go into maintenance and operations. And then that money is also flexible, right? So you can use it however you need those dollars within a park. But again, you're sharing that bucket with all the other city priorities. And then your last one is your alternative funding solution. That's where we look at our grants and partnerships. So those are really great. They are very good at supplementing. I think our Parks Department, we all know, does a really great job going out and getting those dollars. But those dollars are competitive and they're often project specific, and they also need matching funds some of the time. And that is, I believe, what Ethan uses a lot of the impact fee for, is those abilities to go out for the larger dollars. So this just kind of gives you how, you've got those different buckets that you can play with. Right now, the circles are all the same size, but theoretically, you would shrink and expand those circles that would go into your growth aligned parks funding. Okay, this slide. This is where I'm going to get to your question. So this slide has a lot of information on it, and I'm going to just kind of start. So within the packet, there was a spreadsheet that shows the impact fee options from 10 to 90%. So you can see that range. What we have before you on this slide and what we talked about in the blue sheet is really 50, 60, and 70%. Those are the ranges that staff has kind of identified as maybe the sweet spot to be able to fund that future growth. And something that I want to just point out too here is that regardless of however you choose to allocate or choose the percentage, someone's going to pay, right? So as we saw in that last bucket, you're either going to have developers pay, city pay, or we're going to have to go out for more grants and find that opportunity. So someone's always going to pay, right? And a couple of the rules around these impact fees is that obviously they're based on capital cost. And as I mentioned earlier, they're not adjusted by the CPI. So every year we come to you with the fee resolution and we apply the consumer price index to that, right? And impact fees are one-time adopted. They are that dollar amount until you choose to do a capital project or a capital report to evaluate changing that dollar amount. So just from 2017 to 2024 regionally, the total CIP in the last 7 years is about 31%. So if we would have applied the CPI year over year, our single family impact fee would have been about 5,000 some change, and our multifamily would have been a little over 3,500. Okay, that's if we were allowed to apply those CPIs. If you use that same rule, looking at the 60% on the chart, so knowing if you were to adopt that dollar amount today, the dollar amount's not going to change. And then if you were to say roughly the same level of inflation we've experienced the last 7 years will continue, then potentially if you could apply CPI, that single family dollar amount would be a little over 7,500 and a little under 5,500. And I just point that out a little bit. It's that kind of how my brain works. Because I want to show that perspective because I wonder, or there's a curiosity around the concern over the impact fee on home construction. If it was just going up a little bit every year, would we notice that impact? I don't know the answer to that, but that's why I kind of want to say this, is that there is, kind of a couple little cuts versus just it feels like a bigger chop. So knowing that we recalibrate every 7 years, this is kind of a nuanced fee, right? And so again, getting kind of back to some of the questions around the developer concerns versus reality, anytime we do impact fees, and we're gonna be talking transportation later this year as well. There's always the argument that high impact fees increase home prices, deter buyers. While there might be some validity in this concern, a lot more reports are coming out that suggest that could probably be overstated, right? A home is gonna sell for whatever the market value is. These are considered soft costs to the developer. Oftentimes they want that larger margin for them. So they come in and they advocate for those reduced costs to allow for a higher margin. Okay. Now, when we talk about affordable housing, emergency supportive housing, all of that, they're exempt from this fee. So builders that are coming in and building that type of houses, they're already exempt. We're talking about the market rate 120 plus builders. The other kind of flip side to that discussion from where I sit as a planner is that you could also argue that a well-structured city with great parks, great amenities, also bring people into a community and they're willing to pay for that, right? And so, you know, I think from where we sit here, it's really about balancing, one, being transparent, having a report that says, this is the types of parks we want, this is the types of parks we need. We have that in the pros plan. I think the other piece to that is structuring this fee where we feel comfortable to help mitigate maybe some of those developers' concern, but also make sure that we're not giving up our ability to create the city park system that we want to see. And, you know, I do also think sometimes in that conversation, there is kind of a short-term versus a long-term vision. And I think those in the industry and maybe even the city could come at that differently. But I do believe inherently that we all want good, wonderful cities with great, safe parks, right? I think our development industry wants that as well, okay? So I say all of that. Did that answer your question, first of all, council member, about the developer? Or not quite?
No.
Okay, let me see if I get there.
I'm sorry, other cities.
Okay, so what we have before you is the numbers that came out of our pros plan, okay? And in the packet, I did give some comparable cities, and we just called those cities, and you can see that some of those updated in 2024. Some of those cities, yes, they updated their impact fee with their comp plan. Some cities are going to be like us and reevaluating that because they're just adopting their new capital. So we'll see some cities go back and readjust this, okay? So I also caution that comparing to other cities isn't really apples to apples because each one of those cities has different structures, okay? I'll use our neighbors in Auburn and Maple Valley, for example. Now they have an impact fee, but they also have a different structure for how they decide to build their parks and what their growth projections are as well. They have some different standards as well. Some cities will say, developer, you build the park, it's privately owned and maintained. When we did that analysis in 2017, we took that option out and said, no, we don't want a bunch of little last minute thought about pocket parks. And so right now, we're going to just have you pay the fee. We will go out and we will buy the land. We will build the park. So that's a little bit how our structure is different. Some cities kind of have a two-piece, right, where you still build, they're privately held, and you pay an impact fee. Other cities like us say, you know what, building one's optional. You can do that for the benefit of the people in your community. But what you're going to contribute to Covington as a whole is our ability to go out and build larger, more centralized parks. So yes, there's comparables in there. Yes, in some areas we are higher than some of our neighbors. In some areas we're lower, you know, like our Sammamishes. But that's because that level of service and the structure around what Covington wants may not be apples to like what Maple Valley or Auburn want. Do you want to add to that, Ethan, or did that?
Christina.
No, I think you said it well.
Okay.
Can I
Unless there's another
ask?
question.
Yeah.
Do you know currently, what are we acreage per thousand approximately? I know that's a
sharing my
big-
screen so
I can see if I can find it. I don't know it off the top of my head.
just so we know kind of where we stand and what our goal is and what the gap is. Because I think for me, that would help decide the percentage today, not to put you back to. work.
No, it's all in the pros
Just
plan.
approximately, yeah. Sorry, guys.
I will say it's a little bit of a formula to compare what we have now with what you anticipate, say, 2042.
Absolutely.
Because you have to take into account growth, so.
Absolutely. And that's something that I believe every city, there's no city that's not gonna receive growth. So. Well, we can't, yeah. It's not apples to apples, but.
Or they've got a lot of growth, but they don't have the ability to go purchase land, right? So then they look at how do we make our existing parks different or better as well.
Sure.
So their cost of infrastructure is less because they're not paying a land value. They might just be paying improvement value.
Yeah.
And just to bring back up from a previous meeting, the average single-family home in Covington is selling for, it was over $900,000.
Was it 950,000?
Yeah.
New
Yes.
and used
New.
goes around between 500 and 600.
Right, but the impact fees wouldn't impact.
Oh, no.
No,
It's only on new.
Right.
Only new.
So, okay. And we don't get a lot of duplexes, or we might be seeing some of that coming in as density goes in.
yeah, with with HB 1110, which is also going to be coming to the council, obviously, we just had the two, we've expanded that. So that built-in proportionality is already built into the housing type. So we know in the industry that a duplex has a little bit lesser impact because there's a little bit fewer people in that than you would in a normal single-family home. And those numbers are all in the pros plan. I just use single family because it's the larger of those options. So, but we do anticipate townhomes. We do anticipate attached housing into the future.
So if for some reason, I don't know, in one of our neighborhoods, a developer comes in, tears down the single family dwelling, decides to apply for a permit for a duplex,
Yes.
they still need to pay a new impact fee, or is any of that carry over because the property already paid for one the first time around?
Yeah, that's exactly it, council member. They get credit for the existing. And it has to be built within like a year or 18 months or something. The state law outlines that. So they would just be paying for the new growth, but they would get credit for the existing. And that's same in a development where if there was a single family home and we did 60 homes on it, they get one credit. They get one credit for fire, parks, school, transportation.
And is that the current rate? And then they just pay the difference between whatever the rate is at that time or what was already paid for when it was built?
So the existing house doesn't get assessed is a different way to think about it. So just the new one would be assessed at the rate in place at the time they pull their permit.
But the credit portion comes from?
The credit portion is that if they built a duplex, then yeah, we would have to do some mathematical equation because they went from single family to duplex, but ideally they're not paying for both of those. It would be just for the duplex. So if they came in for the duplex, they would pay the 3,500 or whatever number you guys choose tonight. Yeah.
Yes.
A portion of that.
Is it possible this is kind of sticker shock. There is, and it's normal. Like you said, we haven't done this in 7 years. Is it possible to incorporate something moving forward in the future that can annually so that we don't have, is that feasible or is that not feasible? It just feels like it would be more palatable.
I can take a stab at that. With the resources that we have and staff capacity that we have, we wrap this into our consultant pros plan, so that's $100,000 plus that we do our pros plan. So unless we really want to start doing that every year.
I see. So it's not like a line item where it can be incorporated into the equation where next year.
You could do it every year, but you have to spend the time updating the
Well,
report and
No,
calculation. So
unless, okay, thank you.
Just to come back to your question earlier, our existing or in 2022, our total acreage for our park system, this includes open space and things like that, is 142 acres. And our projection with growth after 20 years would be needing 233.8 acres. So there's a difference of 91.8 acres.
Should we grow that?
Okay, go ahead.
That is the last slide we have for you tonight, council.
So tonight if you're looking for a preferred park impact fee and the percentage that you're looking for. If council wants to take action tonight, and then we also need to pass a proposed ordinance that's attached. Correct? That's what you're looking for?
That is correct. And we can still do the proposed ordinance if the council wants to still talk about impact fees more at a future meeting, because all the ordinance is doing is changing how we reference. And then if you agree with the exemption and the reduction, those are the only 3 changes in the ordinance tonight.
Okay. So before us staff is recommending 50, 60, or 70%. And you'll notice, so like on page 425 of 444 on the blue sheet, 50% is a 24% increase, which for single family is $945. Multifamily, $667. And then going across to 60%, 70%, you're seeing the increase from the current impact fee, which is what's listed up above. And then on page 426, it showed you what the assisted living rates are at 50, 60, and 70. So does council wish to discuss or to take action on which percentage tonight? Beth?
I would move that we adopt the 70% rate. I guess I did have one clarifying question.
Yes.
Can we make different rates for different groups of houses? It's one or other.
Not ideal. We want to be
That's fine.
consistent, yeah, in the percentages.
So I would make a motion that we adopt the 70% increase.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
So it's been moved and seconded to adopt the park impact fee at 70% as the city's park impact fee and to be incorporated into the fee resolution as adopted by the city council. Beth, do you want to speak to your motion?
I would, and I know that it seems pretty severe, but when we look at what the actual dollar amount is, it's $4,000 on a home that's going for almost $1 million. And I know that the developer will need to pay for it initially, but the reality is there's going to be a homeowner that's going to come through and pay that, and they're going to be amortizing that $4,000 over a 30-year mortgage. So I don't feel that it's going to be as much of a burden in the long run. The developer is going to charge the price. Those homes are going to go for that price. We have several huge projects coming down the pipeline. And having that grant funding there, helping to provide our level of service. People are coming to Covington for the nature, for the parks, for the amenities that we provide, and being able to have that flexibility to have that is important, especially with the amount of development that's coming down the pipeline. We want to make sure that we take advantage of that now before permits get vested.
So just to clarify though, at 70%, a single family home would be at $6,800,
Correct.
not 48.
No, I was the difference.
Okay.
The difference would be,
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Beth.
Mhm.
Sean, did you want to speak to your second?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. I concur with Beth. I'm just doing some quick math here. One of the things we consistently hear from our residents is that they're attracted to Covington for the quality of life, the amenities, the ability to get outside. And I think we have, as a council, made a commitment to meet our goals for things such as healthy living, mental health, but also certain levels of service for our park system. And As Ethan said, we're expected to need about another 100 acres, to add another 100 acres to our park and park system. That acquiring that property is not going to get cheaper going forward. And so, while I agree with Beth that it seems dramatic, it's a 0.7% increase, 0.7. So it's less than 1% increase on the cost of a house. And that is unlikely to cause many, if any, to think second about buying a house in Covington. In fact, I think if we go forward with a strong commitment to our park system and expanding it, some people may be attracted to Covington for its commitment to those types of things. We continue to hear from the public about needs for additional parks, different additional sports courts, that sort of things, but even a dog park. And so I'm at this parks impact fee rate at 70%.
Thank you, Sean. Is there anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? Jennifer?
Yeah.
I'll have to say that I was shocked when Beth still initially said 70%, but I see the reasoning. I see the increase is actually like 0.3% of what it would be now. So it's even a smaller change of the total price of the home. So I support the motion as well.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? Debbie?
Well, I agree. I was also shocked that we would go right to the 70% and wouldn't have expected that I would agree with that tonight. But understanding the CPI has not been accounted for in that long period of time. It's been so great, 31%, I believe it was. And that we're still short 100 acres to meet our prescribed level of service. It sounds like it's necessary.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the park.
Christina.
Oh, I didn't see your hand.
So sorry. The CPI change would have left us at 5,100 today. And we all raised our hands when somebody said $950,000 for a house. Why? Because that was a shock. That's really expensive. I think it's what we need on paper and those nearly 100 acres that we need. I don't think we are allowed to make the decision for the home buyer and say, oh, they wouldn't mind. I think every penny, especially in today's world, matters, and driving away. This isn't in favor. I understand what we need, but this is not in favor of developers. And developers are important, and they would be in Covington. I think a 60% proposed fee increase, or not increase, but a 60% would be a little more reasonable, where it would put us at, 5,800 for single family residence, which if we look on the slide, the regional cumulative CPI would have, if applied, would have left us at 5,100. I think it's reasonable to increase it to 5,800, accounting for the future, and not necessarily say that it won't make a difference, because if you or I, it may make a difference. We just don't know that. The 70% I don't agree with. It's just too much. Too much of a jump, in my opinion, but I'm just one person.
Anybody else? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the park impact fee. Been moved and seconded to adopt the park impact fee at 70% as the city's park impact fee, and to be incorporated into the fee resolution as adopted by the city council. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay. The motion passes. Thank you. The second is to pass a proposed ordinance in substantial form as that attached hereto, amending chapter 19.6 of the Covington Municipal Code Park Impact Fee, which is on page 432 of 444. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Jennifer, would you like to speak to your motion?
Obviously, we need to document what we just motioned, so yes, I fully support it.
Thank you. Beth, would you like to speak to your second?
I think what Selena also talked about, and well, Ethan too, is if we can get that updated now, it'll provide the flexibility they need moving forward for development and proposed plan without having to revisit it every year or two.
Thank you, Beth. So moving to, anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? It's been moved and seconded to pass a proposed ordinance in substantial form as that attached hereto, amending chapter 19.60 of the Covington Municipal Code Park Impact Fee. All those in favor state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. New business item number 8 is consider adopting the 2025 legislative priorities and policies. Regan.
Well, this one should be a little easier. So this came before council last month in October. We reviewed our legislative priorities and policy document for our 2025 legislative session. Council didn't have any changes to the proposed legislative priorities. However, council did want to add one element to our legislative policy document, and that's been added to the second page. It's under behavioral health treatment capacity. It's essentially urging legislators to increase funding for behavioral health and responder crisis response and other mental health, behavioral health funding. So happy to take any questions on that. If council adopts these tonight, we'll start meeting with our delegation soon and preparing for next year's legislative session.
Does anybody have any questions for Regan on this?
So moved.
Sean, did I hear? Oh, Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. Thank you, Regan, for updating the policy document. And I understand the way the legislative priorities and the policies are prioritized. I guess going forward, and perhaps I've missed it, it basically says on the policy documents that the city has adopted the following policies. The policy document provides direction to city staff and the city lobbyists. These are issues that the city will weigh in on along with AWC and other stakeholders, but are secondary. So I'm just wondering, so we won't actively advocate for these policies, but I look at things like the property tax increase. I think that's something we've had on our policy document for a long time, and I'm wondering what, if any, proactive action we would take on some of these. So, and if it's none, then I guess going forward, I'd like to see from our lobbyists and from the city a report on what potential vehicles were going forward on these and whether we took a position on them or not.
Yeah, great comments there, Sean. So the priorities are ones that we put together documents on, information. We push those with legislators that would be influential on those decisions. With the policy document, it really kind of ebbs and flows with how the legislative session is going. There are several issues on our policy document in years past that we are really active on because a coalition is formed and there's legislative support, and so we jump on it. We're down testifying at hearings and lobbying in other ways. So I wouldn't say it does say there that we're not actively working on it, but depending on how the session goes, we are. In your example with the property tax issue, that's going to take an incredible coalition to do anything there, and some have been formed. Nothing's passed or moved, but there is effort again this year with AWC leading the charge, and we'll be actively supporting that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, council wish to take action. I heard a motion from Christina.
Yeah.
Your second. Okay, been moved and seconded to adopt 2025 legislative priorities and policies. Christina, like to speak to your motion?
Sure. As I was reading these, they were very much in line with what our city needs and our desires and for the future of our planning. I just support these each and individually, and I think we've done a great job.
Thank you, Christina. Jennifer, would you like to speak to your second?
I really appreciate you adding the behavioral health treatment capacity language. That is extremely important. And I know you mentioned it was, part of AWC in Sound Cities, but I think having it present in there and always in front of people's faces, like, I know it's a given, but it's a given that really, really, really needs attention. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? All right, thank you, Jennifer. Been moved and seconded to adopt the 2025 legislative priorities and policies. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That concludes new business. Looking at future agenda items, our next meeting is Tuesday, November 26th, tentatively starting at 6:40 with an interview. And then meeting starting at 7 with reports of commissions. Does council have anything they'd like to see on a future agenda item moving forward in 2025? No, thank you. Let's move to council and staff comments. Adam is not here tonight. Start with Ethan.
I think you've got enough of Parks and Recreation today, probably. No comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Ethan. Don.
Nothing tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Don. Selena.
Same, I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Casey.
You'll see, tonight I sent out an email to all of you for the 2023 audit exit conference that we're gonna be having. It's going to be November 25th at 9 a.m. It'll be through Teams. So if you're interested in attending, just let myself or Casey know and send you the link. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Mark.
Thank you. There's no executive session tonight and I have no further comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Regan.
Nothing for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Regan. Krista.
Nothing for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina.
We did a lot of work today. I'm proud of how we worked together and nothing for me. I'm having a skip meeting this Friday, so I'll report back next month for that.
Thank you, Christina. Beth.
Just thank you so much for all the work y'all put into it. Because there's these last few meetings of the year, we have a lot. And I mean, just for the audience, a lot of this is work that's been done in prior meetings. So it seems like we're just going through stuff, but we put a lot of thought and time and effort into it and had support from our staff. So appreciate everything. Thanks.
Thanks, Beth. Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple things. So the RFA had its most recent meeting last week. A couple things that came out of there. We got an update from operations, which solicited the chief's interview taking place for 81 entry-level firefighters, and 20 conditional offers were extended. And the next fire academy is going to start on January 21st, 2025. Chief Cox also talked about the recent 44 car accident, which was considered a mass casualty accident on I-5. So that obviously taking place in our RFA drew significant resources and time and was one of the larger response in a long time. In fact, the RFA has recorded or responded to over 40,000 incidences since as of November 4th. So we're getting a good return on our investment. Was something else I wanted to we tentatively passed the 2025 budget, which could be subject to change. You got a kind of a quick overview of that tonight. And then at the end of the RFA meeting, we got a report on the RFA's overall history. And I don't know if anyone knows this, but the RFA, although it wasn't called that, Kent Fire started in 1892 and was basically a volunteer service for quite a while. And then they've incorporated 9 additional fire departments. Since then, Covington's was Fire District 37 was incorporated in 1948. So over 100 years of service by the Kent Fire and Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority. So anyway, it was a good meeting.
Thank you, Sean. Debbie.
Thank you. Yesterday we had really good turnout at our annual Veterans Day commemoration at CCP. I think there could have been 50 people, which was up about 30 from the previous year. So a few lessons learned that we'll look at for doing things even better next year. And then that followed on the heels of last week. We had the first ever celebration and honoring of the veteran volunteers of Tahoma National Cemetery. And the city co-sponsored along with Rotary Club and Edlin Yon Funeral Chapel. It was hosted by Edlin Yon. And the idea there was to really honor the volunteers that work out at TNC that do all of the honor guard and the some landscaping all the way down to actually doing some DNA research to find family members of soldiers that are laid to rest that have no family members identified. And we found that what we heard last week talking to them is that they have found family members for remains all the way back to the Civil War. So just incredibly honored to have TNC right in our backyard, and thank you to Jeff and Regan both for coming out and speaking at that event. It was well received. And tomorrow, just a reminder, Happy Lemon ribbon cutting. Woohoo.
Thanks, Debbie. Jennifer.
I know it seems like it's been forever, but I wanted to extend a huge thank you for the budget workshop. It was well run. I did take the plunge and read through it electronically. I urge everyone to do the same, save some of our trees, you know, I'm the Lorax here. It wasn't horrible. It was actually easy to just flip through and go back to things. So anyway, if you want to take a risk next year and move to an electronic binder, I highly recommend. Also, thank you to staff for planning those great ribbon cuttings. They went really well. The weather held out. Legislators showed up. And were both really well attended events and definitely something to showcase and for the city to be proud of. So thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Joe.
I've got picked tomorrow night. And other than that, and we have next week I have RTC and the general manager of transit will be at the caucus meeting, which I unfortunately will not be able to attend. But if anyone has questions they would like asked to the general manager of RTC, just let Bob know and he can get them forwarded to the caucus for us and we can hopefully get some of those answers. So hopefully Bob can attend in my place. But
thanks, Joe. Just real quick, Race Across America will be at Tahoma Cemetery on December 14th. SCA board elections will be December 12th, Zoom at 5 p.m. So we'll bring that back to another council meeting to vote on, Krista, so that we can vote on that, who will be the representative. And then that is all I have. So our second public comment period, speakers will state their name, organization, and whether they are a Covington resident. Comments are directed to city council, not the audience or staff. Comments are to be related to city business. Comments are not intended for conversation or debate and are limited to 4 minutes per speaker. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address council this evening? Seeing nobody online, this meeting is adjourned at 9:08. Thank you.